Homecoming is almost here. That's right, the bodies are piling up as we're waiting to find out with bated breath who will be the homecoming queen. But more importantly, who's killing all of the candidates. It seems pretty clear, but things are about to get a lot more murky.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday. And you know what that means. It's time for your spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and I am going to be bringing you part 3 of the 5-part miniseries, Homecoming Queen Killer. But I'm speaking to you all today from a place of grief. This very morning, I had to say goodbye to my dog Chicano. He's been fighting cancer for over a year, and he was in too much pain, and I had to do the hardest thing I've ever done and let him go. But after spending most of the day resting and being with friends and loved ones, I didn't want to skip the show. I just didn't want to. I wanted to talk to all of you, and I wanted to bring you your spooky on the weekly, because I love this show and I love the people who love it. But I'm going through a lot right now. He was a damn good dog, and I loved him with all my heart. So, after the story, instead of doing the usual end talk where I plug the Patreon and all of that, I'm just going to talk a little about my good boy. And if you don't want to listen to that, if it makes you sad or depressed or what have you, that's totally okay. This is not weekly grieving. This is weekly spooky. So with that all being said, I'm so happy you're here, because this is a good one. I enjoyed reading it, and I'm not enjoying a lot right now. So let's get to part 3 of Homecoming Queen Killer after these quick words. Last time on Homecoming Queen Killer, Melisande LaPala returns to school after the death of her friend Britt Speedman. Much to her delight, Loralee Alexandra, secretly Loralee Hardy, is now a student at Shore City East High School. The two girls become even closer, to the point where they start dating and eventually become intimate. Melisande continues to be attacked by others only for them to meet violent demises. At one point, Reese Claiborne is hell-bent on eliminating Melisande from her life permanently and orders Allie Prinz to kill her, only to be saved by Arnie Razor Rathman. Loralee arrives too late to save Melisande and sees her in Razor's arms, forcing her to decide if she needs to kill him as well. And now, prepare yourselves for Homecoming Queen Killer, Part 3 of 5. Wednesday evening. After school, Loralee Hardy and Melisande LaPala were starting their new jobs at Roth's Rings. Loralee felt her heart pounding when she saw how happy and relaxed Melisande was. At one point, the two of them had to go in the back to grab supplies. Loralee surprised Melisande by easing her up against a wall and kissing her. Melisande wrapped Loralee in her arms as they were making out, hot and heavy. She moaned harder when Loralee's hands were inside her silky black blouse and caressing her back. She wrapped one of her legs around Loralee and felt her heart ready to explode, clearly wanting to be intimate with Loralee again. Unfortunately, when they heard people at the counter, they were forced to come apart. They smiled at each other before picking up their supplies and taking them up front. The girls were both surprised when they saw 3 beefy guys inside chasing everybody out of the building. Before they realized it, one of them had locked the door. Then they approached the counter. Melisande immediately recognized Clem Otterson, one of Shore City East High's resident hoods. He always had his 2 friends in tow, Kenny Ford and Fred Willis. The 3 guys and the employees were at a standoff. "Get the fuck out of here," Loralee told them, breaking the silence. Clem shook his head. "Nope, can't hear ya. See, we're supposed to fuck you both up." He pointed to Melisande. Mostly her. Melisande bowed her head. "Why can't Reese just leave me alone?" Loralee knew she could take the 3 of them easily, and she really wanted to end them, most violently. However, she thought of Melisande and didn't want to lose her. The mere thought of it caused Loralee to close her eyes in pain. "Don't worry, we'll keep hitting you both real hard so you can die sooner," Fred jeered. Loralee opened her eyes and shook her head quickly, but it was because she would not lose Melisande. She quickly picked up the phone and dialed 911. Before the hoods could stop Loralee, Melisande picked up 2 cups of hot coffee and threatened to throw them both. After Loralee talked to the operator, she hung up the phone. "You guys are so fucked," Loralee told them. "Yeah, you didn't call him," Kenny jeered, calling Loralee's bluff. Suddenly, they heard tapping on the front door. Everybody turned to see 2 Shore City PD representatives standing there. Loralee moved and unlocked the door to let the officers come in. After the girls lodged their complaint, the guys were arrested. Loralee even gave each of the officers a free drink and a donut of their choice as a thank you. Melisande turned to Loralee. "I wish I could be more like you. You're always so brave and can stand up to people. I can't do that. I'm so skinny I'll blow away in the wind." Loralee really wanted to tell her the truth. "Hey, this is where we work. Couldn't let those assholes do what they did." Seeing they were alone again, at least for the moment, they returned to the back and resumed their heated makeout session. When their shifts were over, the girls went back to Melisandre's house. "I'm guessing my parents are home now," she said sadly. "We'll see," Loralee replied. When Loralee took and held her hand, Melisande asked, "If not, spend the night with me again?" Loralee smiled. "You know I will." But when the girls reached the house, they saw a most unwelcome visitor. "Uncle Louie?" Melisande asked. "What do you want?" "I've been by here the last couple of days," he answered rudely. "Seems your parents ain't home. Want to tell me where they're at?" Melisande shrugged. "I don't even know." Louis moved from the porch and shoved Melisande. "Goddamn devil-worshipping bitch. You probably killed him for Satan to keep giving you your black magics, didn't you? Which would explain some of them red stains I found in the living room. Guess you didn't clean up as good as you thought." He shoved her again. "I got a good mind to beat your fucking ass and drag you to church, you ungrateful little bitch. Never did like you. Always thought you was a waste." Melisande always hated Uncle Louis. Now she was very angry and she shoved him back. "Get the fuck out of here." "Or what?" he challenged. "We both know you ain't got nothing. You ain't even 100 pounds soaking wet." Then he slapped her across the face. "Come on, Call your Lord and Master Satan to come and strike me down. Loralee was seething with anger when she suddenly stood in between them. You heard what she said. Get the fuck out of here. I already called the cops once today. Louie wasn't backing down. Get out of my face before I belch ya. But Loralee wouldn't oblige and waited for Louie to make good on his threat. But he never did. Melisande was so angry she jumped on Louie's back when he turned away and pulled on his hair. Get the fuck out of here, she screamed. I fucking hate you. Louie tried throwing her off, but Melisande held fast. He finally tripped and fell with Melisande right on top of him. Loralee eased her off. Then he got up and glared at both of them. I'll be back, you fucking Satanists, he promised. I'm gonna get to the bottom of this. Louie yelled and cursed as he left the property. Loralee turned to Melisande and held her close. I'm so sorry, honey. I feel like this is all my fault. Please don't leave me tonight, Melisande pleaded. He'll be back. I know he will. Loralee considered it. Go inside, lock the doors, and calm down. I'll go and get us some dinner. Sound good? She felt Melisande nod on her shoulder. When they separated, they shared a quick kiss. When Loralee left, Melisande went inside. Again, she felt her parents were nowhere to be found. And she was starting to wonder. Louis LaPala stopped in at a nearby tavern. He ordered a few shots of whiskey and started yelling to the bartender about the two devil-worshipping girls who were to blame for his being pissed off. Then he ordered another shot of whiskey. As he was about to drink it, he felt someone right next to him. Rough night, motherfucker? Louis turned to see Loralee pick up his whiskey shot and splash it in his face. You fucking bitch! He yelled. But Loralee was out the door before he was on his feet. Louis was in hot pursuit. Loralee led him on a chase down a few alleyways and eventually made sure he saw her go inside an abandoned warehouse. Loralee led him up to the second floor, but it was on the third where Louis finally found her. Completely naked. He couldn't believe it when he saw her. Do you like what you see? She purred. I'm still gonna kill your fucking ass, Louis growled and came at her. Loralee stood her ground. Not happening. She pulled a glass shard out from behind her back and drove it up under his chin. Because I just killed your fucking ass. When Louis fell onto his back, Loralee pounced on him and kept stabbing him with the glass. With each hard stab, blood spattered and squirted onto her naked flesh. For a brief moment, she wondered if she might actually be her Aiden personality. No, she knew for sure she was Loralee Hardy. Yet, these days, she was prone to fits of anger and rage the same way Aiden was both in life and in her former personality. The more she thought about it, the more she realized that all of her previous personalities were one with her, which would explain the hostility she sometimes felt that was Aiden or the understanding that was her mother. Loralee moaned softly when she saw she was soaked in the blood of a self-righteous bigot who crossed the line when he slapped Melisande. Even now, she was still very upset, but she was calming down more knowing she had taken care of this particular problem. Loralee moaned again when she stood and got off Louis's corpse. Then she hugged herself when she felt the emotional pain in the pit of her stomach. She hated that people always gave Melisande such a hard time just because she was trying to find herself. She wasn't hurting anyone or anything. If anything, Melisande was a quiet and passionate creature, which was why Loralee realized she had fallen in love with her. As Loralee disposed of Louis's body, she knew she would do absolutely anything for Melisande. She would especially kill anyone who would come in between the two of them. She was already planning on killing Deborah Lehman. The first chance she got. Thursday morning. Melisande was breathing romantic breaths at her locker at Shore City East High School. She remembered waiting a bit impatiently the night before for Loralee to return to the house. Yes, Loralee made good on getting dinner for them. She had truly been listening to her when she said what her favorite food was. Loralee had brought home Chinese food from her favorite place, the Golden Dragon. The place was side to side with a laundromat, and the building looked run down. Inside, however, it looked like a 5-star restaurant. The food there tasted so authentic to her she'd swear it could have been made in China itself. What was more, Loralee had given her a big bouquet of black roses. She didn't know where Loralee could have gotten fresh flowers for her that late, but Melisande cried tears of joy. Melisande and Loralee had again shared a heated night of intimacy before they fell asleep together. She kept wondering what that burning sensation she was feeling in the pit of her stomach was. She knew for sure that it happened whenever Loralee was around, or when she was thinking of her. Suddenly, Melisande shrieked when the hulking form of Arnie Razor Rathman was standing there. She composed herself and gulped. Hi, what's up? I'll come join everybody shortly. Suddenly, Razor pulled something out from behind his back. Melisande gasped when she saw another bouquet of roses, except these were blood red. She gulped and looked up into Razor's face. Will you be my date for homecoming, Melisande? Razor managed to choke out. Melisande really gulped now. Razor, I haven't stopped thinking about you since freshman year, he admitted. If I don't ask you out now, I know I'll regret it for the rest of my life. You don't have to go to the dance with me, Melisande, but I had to ask you. I just had to. Melisande really didn't know what to say. She never expected to get 2 bouquets of beautiful roses in just under 12 hours. She had been so scared of Razor ever since she first met him. She always thought he hated her and wanted to devour her in some odd way. Now she realized how completely wrong she had been about this gentle giant. Why couldn't she have understood that when he stood up for her, twice? And here he was, carrying a burning torch for her. What's going on? A familiar voice interrupted. Razor and Melisande saw Loralee standing there. She folded her arms in front of her when she saw the bouquet. In truth, she had seen everything. I guess this means you're not going to prom with me, she asked Melisande. Then she said to them, this just doesn't ever happen to me. When she looked from one to the other, a tear slid down her cheek. I really don't know what to do.
Did you hear that? Better check the locks on your doors. Weekly Spooky will be right back.
Rhys Claiborne and Ali Prinz saw Razor and Loralee together with Melisande and weren't believing it. How does that fucking skank get 2 people wanting her black heart? Rhys demanded. Want me to fuck him up? Ali asked. You want any of them gone? Rhys turned to Ali. Gone? Yeah. I love how you give me such great ideas. Yes, babe. I want Melisande gone. And I know just how to make that happen. The girls fully faced each other now. I want you to take that fist and really lay it into my face. Ali looked at her with complete shock. Rhys, you heard me. I said, I want you to hit me as hard as you can. Ali knew Rhys well enough to know she wasn't joking. As Loralee and Razor waited for Melisande to say something about their current situation, Some ruckus brought them out of their bubble. They looked to see Reese Claiborne dragging herself on the floor. Melisande gasped when she saw the black eye and the bruises on Reese's face. She never thought she would ever see the day when someone would finally deck Reese. Soon, Principal Theodore Gastor was on the scene. He knelt down beside Reese and helped her to her feet. Reese seemed to be in a great deal of pain. Then she saw Melisande and screamed, "Keep her away from me! She did this!" "What?" Melisande barely squeaked. "Oh, that is bullshit!" Razor roared. "Melisandre's been with Loralee and me." Loralee didn't know how to feel about Razor including her, but at least he was again going to bat for Melisande. Principal Gastor wasn't hearing it, however, and pointed right at Melisande. "Get the hell out of my school right now, you little degenerate! You are suspended, and furthermore, don't even bother coming to the homecoming dance. You're out for the homecoming crown. You can come back to school on November 1st. Melisande tightened her fists, gazed up at the ceiling, and screamed at the top of her lungs. Other students who saw her quickly got away from her. When she lowered her head, she was crying. She couldn't believe Principal Gastor just took Reese's side without hearing hers. "I didn't do it," she squeaked. "Out! Now!" Principal Gastor yelled. As Melisande turned to leave, one of the other homecoming queen candidates and a popular cheerleader, Daphne Ridley, sneered at her. "You'll always be on the outside looking in, Satan. Why don't you just get the hint and keep on walking? You'll never belong here." Again, when Principal Gastor let even Daphne's comment pass without a word, Melisande couldn't stop herself from crying more as she slowly walked out through the main doors. Deborah Lehman and Valinda Bright both saw everything. And then Deborah gasped with a look of horror when she saw Loralee Hardy. She approached her former lover and barely whispered in horror, It can't be you. You're dead." Loralee responded by smiling and giving her the finger. Then she left to go after Melisande, knowing she could not be alone. Thursday evening. Daphne Ridley had just gotten home from cheerleading practice. Her now ex-boyfriend Russell Vickers was waiting for her on her front porch. Daphne looked at him with both anger and awe. "I fucking told you I was done with you." "But what if I'm not done with you?" Russell sneered. She came up on the porch and dropped her backpack. Gee, let me think. I only caught you feeling up that ugly bitch Abby Gables this morning." Russell shrugged. "Hey, she came and threw herself at me, and I'm a guy. Of course I'm gonna feel her up." Daphne pointed to the street. "Get the fuck off my porch, you disgusting pig." When he wouldn't obey her, Daphne groaned, picked up her bag, and went to go inside to call the police. Suddenly, Russell was on her and pushed her into the house. After closing the door behind him, Russell forced Daphne to the couch and pushed her down on it. He got on top of her and held her arms down. "Your parents ain't home," he said coolly. "That means we got the whole house to ourselves." "Get off of me!" Daphne yelled. He gave her a predatory grin. "Yeah, you know I'm the guy you gotta have every day. And right now, you're fiending." Daphne roared and fought to get Russell off her. She tried turning her head when he went to kiss her, which proved futile when he sucked on her neck instead. She roared again and tried to fight him off, but he was too strong for her. She turned her head to yell at him again, allowing Russell to finally connect with her mouth. Daphne growled when he thrusted his tongue deep inside. When her growls turned into groaning, Russell knew he had her. Daphne sucked on his tongue and then wrestled it with her own. It wasn't long before Russell let her arms go, for them to wrap around him. Daphne had one last bit of restraint left when she felt him trying to lift up her t-shirt. When his hands found 2 mounds of soft flesh underneath, her resistance was conquered. It wasn't long before Russell got Daphne completely naked. Then she watched him quickly undress. He lowered himself on top of her so they could kiss again. The lovers easily got a round of hot and heavy sex in before Daphne suggested they continue up in the shower. When he got her off, she took him by the hand and led him upstairs. As soon as they were in the shower, Daphne got it running. Then she glared at him. "I'm still mad at you." She pushed up on her own endowed breasts. "Mine are so much better than that ugly bitch you were feeling up this morning. And you still felt her up anyway. What the fuck's your problem, Russell? Ain't I good enough for you? Maybe I ought to start getting hot and heavy with your friends and letting you catch us together." Hearing this, Russell realized Daphne had become the girl he couldn't be without either. Okay. No more fucking around, I promise. Daphne sneered. "Yeah, right. You think I don't see you undressing Melisande LaPaula with your eyes every time you see her? I know you want to fuck her. Why? She ain't nothing but skin and bones. She'd probably shatter as soon as you lay on top of her." Daphne wanted to tell him to leave again, but he kissed her hungrily. She returned the favor, and the dysfunctional couple again went hot and heavy. After several minutes, they finished another round. It was then when the shower door suddenly opened. The couple screamed when they saw the girl with the electric carving knife in her hands. Russell groaned when the lethal blade came to life and went across his throat. Then the blade cut into his stomach and shredded his muscular flesh and internal organs. Blood and bits of flesh sprayed everywhere. Daphne screamed as her boyfriend splattered all over her. She screamed louder as she quickly burst from the shower and ran. She had never been so scared as when she heard the insane laughter leaving the bathroom and coming after her. Daphne wasn't even thinking straight when she threw open the front door and darted outside, naked and mostly soaked with Russell's blood and bits of flesh and organs. She screamed a blood-curdling scream as she ran across the street and down an alley. She never heard any of the approving whistles from the males who had seen her streaking. Daphne ran and ran and ran and ran. Daphne saw the end of the alley and began to whimper. As soon as she was out in the middle of the next street, she barely made a peep or comprehended that a car had just slammed into her and sent her flying several yards before she landed hard on the road. She was in great pain and cried as she felt her spine twisted in ways she knew it was never meant to be. She could only hear the door open and the footsteps coming towards her. "You've been taking cheap shots at my Melisande, especially this morning at school," she heard. "So I'm taking some cheap shots at you." "Please," Daphne choked out. "Please leave me alone. I'm sorry. A long pause. Then she heard the response. "Okay, you're forgiven." She heard the girl walk back into her car and get in. The last sounds Daphne Ridley would ever hear would be the car backing up, followed by the tires squealing. Then she felt the front tire running over her head. She was already dead before the back tire crushed her skull and brain inside. Daphne's body twitched for several seconds before it stopped forever. Late Thursday. Deborah didn't want to believe it, but she recognized Loralee Hardy as plain as the nose on her own face. She waited until late to sneak out of her house and drive out to Greenlawn Cemetery. She kept wondering again and again, but it was confirmed by the Strickfield PD that Loralee Hardy was indeed killed at Strickfield High's prom last spring. Deborah practically hit the side of the main entrance as she drove into the cemetery. She could feel her heart racing as she got closer to the location. After she stopped the car and got out, she ran to Loralee's grave and dropped to her knees. "Oh my God," she choked. No two ways about it. The grave looked like the corpse had indeed come out of its coffin. Right away, she realized what had happened. Valinda had talked Melisande into reading a black magic spell right in front of Loralee's grave. Well, clearly there was no supposedly about this. Loralee Hardy was indeed back from the dead, and now she was with Melisande. She knew she had to warn her friends immediately, especially Melisande. As Deborah turned and ran back to her car, someone grabbed her from behind and drove a knife right into her side. Deborah groaned in pain. Before she could react, the knife was removed. Then she was shoved onto her side. The next thing Deborah knew, she heard her car starting. Deborah forced herself to her feet and tried to run. She didn't get far before she was hit by her own car. She tumbled onto the hood, cracked the windshield, and went over the top, tumbled down to the trunk, and slammed right onto the asphalt. The last thing she heard was her attacker getting out of the car and walking away. Deborah tried reaching out when she barely saw the girl's back. "Fuck you, Loralee," she managed to get out before she slipped away into unconsciousness. Perhaps the cold blackness that came with death. Make sure to tune in next Wednesday for part 4 of Homecoming Queen Killer. I promise you, it's going to be a good time. And I'm probably going to take a little time off, so you probably won't have a show Friday or Monday from me. I need this time, and I know you guys understand. 5 years ago in March, I adopted a dog, and his name was Maurice at the time, and I renamed him Chicano. He was 7 years old. A lot of people, rightfully so, don't want to adopt older dogs because the heartbreak comes so much sooner. But I loved him from the moment I looked at him. At his little furry face. He was a dog that had trouble. He had problems. He had emotional problems. He had physical problems. And I didn't care. I loved him so much. He was a good dog. He just couldn't play as much as other dogs his age because he had arthritis. And I wanted to dedicate this little bit of the show to him because the hardest part of going on is going to be that almost every episode you've ever heard of this show, he was sleeping on my feet while I would tell you scary stories or make you laugh on Monthly Spooky or whatever recording you listen to. There's easily an 80% chance he was asleep on my feet, and sometimes I'd even have to stop recording because he would snore loudly. He was just a really good dog, and I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about him. I'm going to miss him a whole lot. So now I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to go get some rest, get some sleep, and I want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you to everybody who's written in and wished me well, wished him well, and especially those of you who donated to his cancer fund, because I spent a small fortune fighting cancer with my boy, and in the end, time always wins. So there's never enough time with the animals we love, with the people we love either. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for giving me this.